Any update on Dorofeyev and Barbashev? Was not there?
Barbashev is just maintenance. He'll be back on the ice tomorrow. Pav is still day to day, so we don't know. On him, he didn't skate with us.
Kept the lines the same from Game 6. Is probably the matchups maybe help with that. They're going loaded on the top line too, but is that kind of what you settled on ultimately? Is just maybe the matchup?
Well, if McDavid and Draisaitl play together, in 2 years ago, if you draw on that, we used different lines, different centermen. So I think Carly's a big part of that, no matter how it shakes out. So if they stay together, then we may just play our guys together and see where it goes. If they move them around, I don't know if our line was going well. If I'd move them around anyway, we got other centermen that can check well, but it is one of Carly's specialties, so we want to make sure we don't miss that opportunity, however it plays out.
I don't know if you, now that the series is over, if you go back and watch all 6 games, but how did this team improve now that you go back and look from 1 to 6?
Sometimes it's funny. You don't even remember if the games 1 and 2, right? There's less intensity. I think sometimes at the start, it's usually those middle games where the animosity starts building. So I think where we got better is we managed pucks better early on in the series. I thought we didn't do a good enough job with that. They converted, especially game 2. O-zone play, I didn't think game 6 was our best, but the other ones before that, I thought we did a better job of spreading them out, having more possession time in there, which ultimately will fatigue them, open up some ice maybe down low, more opportunities around the net with less of their bodies. I thought that was a change in the series for sure. Other than that, not a lot. Our power play was fairly consistent. It got us timely goals. One game it didn't, and they win. That's the way it goes. Penalty kill I liked. Even though we gave up some goals, I thought they didn't generate a lot of high-end chances. Great kill in overtime in game 5, so it got better as we went along. Hilly got better, I thought. More efficient every game. Our top guys, the last part of the series, were better. So I would say what got better was the guys we rely on that play a little more, increased their level as we went along. And it showed in the score sheet and in the win column.
When you think back to that series against Edmonton 2 years ago, what stands out most?
We won. That really stands out. It was a hard-fought series. They're, when I look at Edmonton and they were, I was watching that series because we're trying to take care of our business. So you're watching that one closer than anyone, the LA and Edmonton. And at first, I didn't think they'd get out of it, and all of a sudden they win 4 in a row, right? So they're a heavyweight. Is what they are. So that's what's in front of us. So that's what I recall in that series too. It was 2 good teams going at it with some high-end players producing. We were able to wrestle control. I think it was game 5. There was some fireworks up there, and I think that's typically what happens. Someone drags you into the fight, and off goes the series, right? Like that. There's always going to be some sparks, I think, when we play that team, and we'll see when they happen. So expect that. Expect some physicality, some level of, animosity, amongst the 2 teams, and see where it goes. And I think those types of series are good for us when we get dragged into it. We kind of are better in those, and we'll see how that plays out.
How different do you think the 2 teams are? Like, how different are you guys? How different are they
From
that series 2 years ago?
2 years ago. Well, I think they've changed their head coach, and I think they've used their depth players more. Probably a way to look that up fairly quickly, the minutes, but when I watch them, it seems like they have more responsibility in the bottom of the lineup players. They still rely on their 2 big guys, obviously, but they won games with depth against LA. Their power play has leveled off a little bit. I think it's still very, very dangerous. But they don't, I'd say they would maybe say this, they don't rely on it as much to win games. Only they can answer that, but that would be an outsider's opinion. I think back then they were still going through goalie challenges. Skinner ended up landing, I think, in the net most of the time against us to start. So I don't know who they'll start, but so I would say there's some changes that way, but it's still two very similar teams. You've seen our team evolve over the last 2 years. I mean, I don't want to get too much in. We still try to play the same way, use our whole bench, balance our attack. So I wouldn't say we've changed a lot. Just some people in the dressing room have. It's still Aiden Hill. He went in halfway through that series, and he'll be our guy. So our power play is better than it was 2 years ago. I'll say that. That could be a factor. We'll see.
Bruce, how difficult as a coach is it to navigate this period of time, right? You go from every other day just at a fever pitch, and then it stops. And you got to get through 3 or 4 days, and then it starts again. How hard is that?
Well, the 3 or 4 days I think is fine, to be honest. It's the week, 8 days sometimes. Like, that can be tough if you have success in sweep, say, or 5, and then you've got to wait. I think that's a lot more difficult. This is okay. We flew in yesterday. We rested. Today would be like a game day almost. We come in, we practice. I don't know when we're going to start. So, but I know it's not going to be 8 days away, right? It's early next week. So we'll have to just manage the next 2 days or 3 days at best. So maybe there's one built-in day, an extra day off there. Players love that this time of year, right? I mean, they want to rest. So I don't think this one will be difficult for either team to do 3 or 4 days. I think it allows you to get through your prep too, because there's a lot of video that, as you as coaches do, that you want to find a balance to give them, knowing that you can't shove it all down there. You know what I mean? They're not going to process it all. They just want to play. They want to get out there and play. They know they've played Edmonton. They know what's happening. So that would be the biggest challenge for coaches, how much do you give them every day. And then, as I said, eventually you wake up after game 1 and the series is on. And all that stuff you might have been prepping might be out the window, and some of it's relevant. But that's how I look at it.
I just want a quick one. This team's been around for 8 years. You were around when they came in. As a hockey fan, with the success they've had, like how do you process that they've been to the playoffs for 7 years and they've been deep? It's never been done before.
Well, it seems like it annoys most of the hockey fans. And I'll be honest. It seems like it annoys a lot of people. And I guess that's what happens when you do well. You know, like it's probably the same in other sports. A team that continually does well, it gets annoying. I think that's how I see it, the read on just reading stuff and people that but trust me, as a hockey fan, I was not that person in Boston. I mean, it was good for them. They've done it right. Good template for the next team. And so that's the way I looked at it. Competition makes you better. Now, we were in the East. We didn't see them very often in Vegas, but that's the way I'd look at it. But I can see fan bases from the outside looking in that haven't even been in the playoffs for the last whatever number of years, never mind win a cup and have some runs. So I could see where they'd be upset or annoyed is the word I used. I don't know what the perfect word is, but to me, I look at it as a respectful annoyance because it means you're doing something right, you're doing something well. So that's the part that I think the organization should be proud of.
You're coming off a series against a dynamic top line. You know what's ahead in Edmonton. Is there a seamless way to transition through one series to the next, knowing that?
You're cutting out, Darren. I can't hear you. It's an inside joke. Anyway, I think there is parts of Minnesota's game that will translate to, the bigger bodies going to the net. The bottom of the lineup is pretty much direct and north, so we'll be used to that type of game. I think everyone looks at Edmonton like, oh, they're a rush team. Of course. When McDavid gets the puck, he backs you off, right? Draisaitl's a load to get it from. So there are players on their team that will push you back, but in general, it's a little more direct and it's O-zone. So that was Minnesota. We had to make sure we, took care of O-zone, and I think you'll see a lot of that of Edmonton. A little different animal in terms of the Bouchard factor up top. I don't know that Minnesota's D ever got going offensively that we were like game planning. I think right away that he's out there a lot with Draisaitl and McDavid, and they will find time and space, and he's one of their weapons that they're looking to distribute the puck to. So big group of forwards. I think Minnesota had both, so some of that's relevant. After that, I don't know how it'll transpire. They look more wide open against LA than Minnesota certainly didn't play that way. So will that change because we're the opponent? I don't know. So what will translate is the intensity, and it's big boy hockey this time of year. So that's where that goes right into the next series, where I feel like they're going to have some big boys out there competing hard, and then we're going to have to be ready for that, especially in the slot battle. That's an area that I thought against LA, they made a conscious effort to get inside and get to the top of the crease and stay there, and they did a good job with it. We have to be ready for that.
Maybe speak, Bruce, this time of year, how thin the margins are. We were saying that they have a power play in Game 4, Minnesota does. You guys kill it, win. Overtime win Game 5, another one-goal win in Game 6. How fine a line it is, and how do you guys seem to be comfortable in those tight spots of these series?
Well, people talk about experience. It does matter. That doesn't mean you're going to win, but you've been through some of these things, so you're probably a little more collected. You're calmer, knowing that, okay, we got a penalty in overtime. A lot of teams might be like, oh my, you know what I mean? Like, okay, it's just, we got to kill it. It's a penalty kill that we've killed many times before. So let's make sure we bear down on the little details. So there's just a little bit of been there, done it that I think can help you through some of those moments. But you still got to perform. You got to execute. And you got to play. So that's how I look at our team. They've been there, and I think we're a bit of that team that I've said it this year. Like, we know how to win, and we've proven it. And it's not always pretty. And there are times in a game that it gets away from us, and you're wondering, how can this be the same team that found a way to win under duress? But that's our group. That's who we are, and I think we wear it well. I think we won more games in regulation than anybody this year. Now we've added. I know we won 2 in overtime, but it's still 5-on-5 to me. It's just an extension of the game, right? It's not 3-on-3 or shootout. So we're okay in close games. In fact, sometimes we have the lead, and I think sometimes we just want to make it close when you're sitting behind the bench. Like, I say that tongue in cheek, but it's like, really? We can't have an easy one tonight, and that's our team a bit, right? But we find a way at the end to pull together. And it's different people that get it done. So we don't rely on one thing. So that's what I'd say our team is, and we're good at it. We're good at being that team, and we're going to have to finish games against Edmonton, right? You saw all the comebacks they had against LA. So this is a team that's never out of it. So, that'll be, a learning curve for us right away if we happen to have a lead late, right? So we'll see how we respond. But that's one thing I'll say about the group. They know how to raise their level when need be. It's worked well for us.
You talked at times last year that when you're facing teams, they obviously want what you have, and they obviously want to bring the best out of there. On the flip side of that, knowing where they were last year, does that still apply?
Well, it definitely, I would assume, definitely applies to them. They showed it in the last series, right? They're down 2-0 in Game 3. They had comebacks, and they're a hungry hockey team. I don't know whether how it started for them. I'm not in their locker room, and my guess is you go to Game 7 and lose. I've been there. That maybe you're thinking ahead a little bit at the start of the playoffs. There could be a lot of things going through your head, but they obviously got dialed in, and they're playing at a high level. And I think they will have that hunger that Florida had last year. So that'll be the biggest, probably the big, other than how they play the game. That's a big challenge in front of us, that we have to match that compete hunger, because they were so close. Is that going to be sort of the year they say, well, we're not getting denied this year? Then you're in for a hell of a fight, right? So, but I assume that'll be their mindset. I don't know. I'm not there, but that's what we anticipate.
Do you think that can work for your guys as well?
It can, if they drag us. As I said, anytime a team kind of pulls us into it, we're better. We're better in those type of games. Whether you're good enough in the end, that's, we'll know this in 2 weeks, right? But at the end of the day, I think that's good for our team.